buddy. What's that?
Your chairs are so loud.
Well, don't move. What do you keep doing?
It's like it moves back like 3 centimeters to hit the pencil, and it freaks out. It's so loud.
Yeah, but you get the little flexi back thing to it. Don't you like that?
Yeah, I do like that part.
All right.
As long as it creaks a lot, we're not.
My planaria died.
All of them?
Your what?
Planaria.
Sorry.
Every single one?
No, just the ones I put in high fertilizer.
What do you know about Toulmin model? That's upsetting.
It's a way of modeling your argument.
Really?
I like the eyebrow.
Yeah. So, you structure it around your argument.
How do you model your arguments?
I just kind of scream all my points across.
You scream all your. That's
No,
Ellie.
it's not scream. I'm calm.
No.
I just try to,
So what does Ellie do?
She gets feisty.
You
She
bully
like.
me all class.
She gets feisty about
Like,
wooden pencils.
all class.
Makes Maria uncomfortable because she gets like right here to her.
No, I'm scared. I'm just gonna like throw something.
Next time Ellie speaks, Meredith and Maria.
It's real
will
wooden pencil.
I just
They're
felt like
weird.
yelling at me. I'm like, hey.
Honest question: how does anyone in here set up your argument? Like, how do you structure it? But say you're think of it more as something that you're going to be presenting to people. So yeah, you might say something a little bit differently, or depending upon who you're going against, might want to make sure you have certain kind of elements of evidence, or a way of presenting it. But if you're trying to get your point across to someone, or you're trying to develop a position about something, like what's kind of like the step process that you go through?
I mainly like explain why they're wrong and not like why my point's more right. Like you're
Okay.
wrong.
Okay, so just kind of start with here's their problems, and then we'll get into what you do.
I always just like start by what I believe like said like that like thesis claim,
Okay.
and then I just like to give a bunch of just like support for it, and
So-
then maybe throw in like the life experience, but just like the life support.
Bless you. So here's my stance. I mean, you kind of just did this Friday on the TWA. Here's my claim. Now I'll get into the evidence kind of.
Yeah,
while I
almost
go.
like I'm writing like an essay.
Right. All right.
I don't necessarily think about it for like this person's wrong. Like if I'm convincing an audience want my point, I kind of find a common ground with them that my point supports. Like don't you hate whenever this happens, or I find some sort of common ground and then
With the audience.
with the audience, and then I find it, and then I lead it into my point. I explain my point, and then I say, no, this is why their argument doesn't really work.
Okay. And then we'll do two more. Ellie and then Maria will come back.
So kind of like the grade, like I state the thesis and kind of like why, but then like I figure out like the weaknesses are like the argument and kind of like capitalize on that and just like pound those.
But for yourself, you're starting with here's my claim, and now let me
go
get into.
like why they were wrong.
Okay.
So if you're yelling at me, not that I dislike you.
You
It's
said
just
that,
that-
Maria.
I know I said it. I'm saying. It's not that I dislike you, it's that like I feel like I dislike your work. Like I don't like I feel like I'm not
So you're saying like if I'm yelling at an opponent.
If I think like if I want and this could be like presidential debates, but like I'm thinking like I want someone like level headed who's gonna like really bring their point to the surface rather than just like kind of distract people on a level.
So you're thinking more of the presentation of it as opposed to like the
I
actual
feel like
structure.
presentation is really important. Like,
Oh, it is.
Like I feel like I don't know. I try to like stay calm.
Here's how Toulmin says that it should be set up. These words are all kind of interchangeable. I'd say more often than not, we probably will say evidence, but data, evidence, grounds. You have data, evidence, grounds, which is going to lead to your warrant reasoning, and that's going to lead to your claim. Now, so this, it's like a flow chart. You have data, it's going to lead to reasoning. You have reasoning, it's going to lead to a claim. This would be the order in which he would want you to present it. Or, no, I shouldn't say present it. This is the order in which you should think about it, according to him. So, and I was fully expecting, like what Brady was saying, what Ellie's saying. I think a lot of people are kind of also thinking it this way, even if it wasn't stated. More often than not, we're going to think, okay, let's start here with the claim. Claim is what my belief is. Now I need to kind of come up with some evidence for that claim and whatnot. But what he's saying is you should start off with data, then you should kind of work your way toward a claim. This is probably similar to something that we mentioned a little bit in class on Thursday when we were looking at your sample prompt for Siddhartha. Because we started off with a quote in English class. We started off with a quote about science, where if you have, remember his quote?
Little evidence in much reasoning.
Yep.
There's more likely to be error.
Correct.
And if there's more evidence in much reasoning,
Yeah, and evidence observations, he's kind of using those things. So a lot of reasoning, a little evidence error, a lot of observations, little reasoning, that's where you're going to end up kind of finding the truth. And we kind of connected that, so that's going to be kind of like the scientific method. So by doing, what does this imply by you looking at data first before you get into a claim? That you, and really, Toulmin is a little bit more of a scientific background as opposed to, linguistics and argument and whatnot, but he's under the assumption that you are what when it comes to the claim? Yes. And I'm thinking of an O word too. Not necessarily opposing, but you are not subjective, but you're objective. You're not going into it, I got to prove this point. You're taking a look at the evidence around you, and now you're kind of drawing to your own conclusion with it. So this is something that I think tends to be very idealistic and whatnot. More often than not, Brady's going to have this argument. He knows he has this argument, and then you're going to come up with an evidence. Kira, what did you argue on Friday? Specifically, you went, is, than. This is how our conversations are going to go the rest of the year, one word at a time. So you were given a claim, and then she had to come up with evidence. It wasn't, think about your observations about ice, and then let me know what you want to do. Sometimes the assignment certainly dictates it is, the stance that you are going to take. 3 most common reasons for little kids to choke. Ice. And you mentioned that, I know you had in your argument, so there you go. What were you going to say? Bad parenting? Well, if you're busy fighting another parent at, carpet slides, you can't always watch your kid while they're chugging their Mountain Dew. Although Sadie went root beer, so that was good. All right, so claim. So here's what we mean by claim, and I think for the most part this is going to be pretty straightforward. This is going to be the point that you as an arguer are trying to make. So it's basically going to answer that question, hey, what's your overall point? If you went, overall point versus trying to make as your definition, you're probably going to be okay. We'll get into some more specific types of claims, and those will be the things you're certainly going to want to pay attention to. But this is the order, certainly, that I think you tend to kind of think about things. So we're going to kind of start with claim. Claim, thesis, if you're kind of thinking of it in an essay standpoint, position, argument, all of those things would certainly be synonymous with one another. So an example claim would be you should buy your brother a birthday present because he bought one for you. Who here has brothers? Ooh, and you have brothers. When's the last time they got you a birthday present? Yeah? You should still buy one for them. Be the good person. Ellie has a brother? How old's your brother? 2 brothers.
Yeah, I have one sophomore brother.
They're annoying. Might be more annoying. Yeah. Did they ever get you a birthday present? You should make them a card. But you care. Show them love. Here's what we do want to take a look at. 3 basic types of claims to take base. We have fact-based, judgment value, policy. Fact, claim, which you're going to be focusing on some kind of phenomenon that can be verified. You can verify that this happened. If you're taking a look at judgment or value, you're doing something that is going to be more opinionated. It's going to be something that's a little bit more subjective. Policy, you're kind of looking future into big picture. Here is something that you want to have happen. Avery can't read that one, so we'll have to raise that up for a little bit. So we have fact-based, judgment value, policy. Any thoughts on which kind you think would be more difficult? Why judgment?
I feel that fact would be
So the fact that this is a little bit more opinionated, it could be tougher. And there's not like a correct answer to this. This is in itself, kind of like a judgment value. Probably depends on what the resolution, is that you're going with. Judgment value, it's absolutely dealing with opinions. And Ellie, were you talking about common ground? Trying to establish common ground, or Brandon, you were, yeah. So if you're doing a judgment value, kind of establishing common ground with your audience, probably not the opponent so much, but more so the audience might be beneficial because that could help kind of with the sway of emotions or whatnot. If you have a judgment value claim, it's really easy to tell it's judgment value because there's usually going to be a word that gets included in any guesses. Not I. You could say I believe, could kind of end up, but we want to avoid. No? No? Yeah, there's a word. Think of it, what would be an opinionated argument? No, what would be like an argument? What would be a claim that's opinionated? You think what? Chicken is better than beef?
Yeah.
Okay. So we should all eat chicken instead of beef.
Should.
Ooh, you're picking up on it. Should. So value tends to have should. Chicken is better than beef? Fact. So if you're doing something that is fact-based, you have to prove it. You have to make a connection. If you're going judgment value, it's going to be more opinion attitude. You're probably going to have should showing up with it. I'll explain why that in the future here, why that recognition of should ends up being pretty useful for you down the line. Sometimes fact-based can be, a little bit more difficult, again, depending upon the resolution. Math is a more difficult course than psychology. Well, you got to go and prove why is it more difficult. 2 plus 2 equals 5. Brain's not in it. Yeah, but then he admits 2 plus 2 equals 5.
Whoa, look.
2 plus 2 equals 5. Yeah,
Eat whatever you want.
because it is. That's what the party says. The party. The party. Policy, we'll do this later on when we get to student congress. When Kira advocates that crushed ice or cubed ice must be banned all throughout, known civilization, she'll be making a policy. She'll be looking for legislation and all that kind of stuff. Just maneuvering yourself. Looked like you were getting ready to.
Oh no.
You were just trying not to make noise in your chair. Grounds. This is going to be the proof or evidence that the arguer is going to offer. So this is basically, what is your proof or how come, why when it comes to that claim that you are going to be using. Grounds can consist of many things. It is not limited to just these ones here that we have listed, being statistics, quotations, reports, studies, findings, physical evidence, or various forms of reasoning. What happened to the one dad? He broke his leg? Okay. Well, better than a dodgeball. So you would have physical evidence that he was hurt. What's the evidence? Look, his leg's broken. Here's the x-rays, all of that kind of stuff. There could be various forms of reasoning that he's hurt. How did you know he was hurt? That's probably, they're going to be a pretty good form of reasoning that, yeah, he's probably in some pain. There might not be statistics at the time. Well, what's the statistical severity of your leg being broken or something at that point. But certainly you'd have various types of, that reasoning, that physical evidence, things like that. There could have been reports. Hey, come over here. I think this guy broke his leg. Could have been a type of grounds that happened. Math is more difficult than, psychology. 32% of people in math class fail. 17% in psychology fail. Statistical evidence that would be taking place. Bless you. Statistically, Mr. Kane is meaner than Mrs. Kane. He does 4.8 insults per 40 minutes. She only does 1.2. What do you think? 4.8. Is that accurate or? Low? What? Yeah, for 40 minutes. Way more than that. You're talking about a 10-minute period here, 4.8? Wait, I'm sorry?
Are you going like 80% through a sentence instead of 0.8? Do you just like almost get to a full insult and just stop? Or is that like the average?
Oh, for the 4, well, it's the average.
It's the average.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Fair.
So, every 5 days there's that extra one thrown in there. So we get to that 4.2. Look at that, quick computation. Example of different types of grounds. It looks like rain. The barometer is falling. The other Applebee's restaurants that I've been in had clean restrooms, so not really. I'll bet this one has clean restrooms too. Could be experience that has taken place. I've never been to the restroom at Carpet Slides. I have no idea.
I came to last night, so.
It's okay? All right. Are the black lights in there too? Or like you get a little... That could be disturbing. We don't want that to happen. So these would be different types of evidence that you're looking at. And hey, it looks like rain, the barometer is falling. You could also have something where it's not going to be quite as verifiable, but you could usually go, it looks like rain because it's cloudy, or there's dark clouds coming in, or I see puddles on the ground. So there's certainly different types of evidence that could be happening. There's water falling from the sky. Well, that could be someone on the roof going squirt gun assassins on people, maybe. Who knows? So, grounds can be based on the 3 main things that we would go here would be evidence, source, credibility, analysis, and reasoning. This seems a little redundant, I understand, because one of the synonyms we use for grounds is evidence, so we're going evidence can be based from evidence. That's why we're going to use the term of ground here. But what we mean by evidence is going to be more of like this physical proof. I have some type of data information that is going to be backing that up, whether it be the 4.2 insults per 40 minutes. The midterm is really difficult because I got half of the questions wrong, kind of thing, stuff like that. Brady, if you decide to skip the first passage, as some people chose to, make sure on your answer sheet you also skip the correct number of questions. Well, you come back to it later.
Wait, you give us the whole thing?
Yeah. A lot. I cannot confirm nor deny. Now you think about this. So far as source credibility, because I think when you do say grounds, the facts, statistics, reports, physical proof, things like that are what kind of come to mind right away. But what would be source credibility? How could you have authorities, experts, and all this kind of stuff working its way in? I heard the midterm's really hard. Well, how did you hear about that? Morgan. So if Morgan's source credibility, if she is considered an expert about it or a close friend, that could be where that evidence is coming from. I don't have any proof. I haven't seen it, but it's clearly based on what I've heard that it is going to be difficult. So that would be that source credibility. The analysis and reasoning one, this would be where you don't have proof or actual reports or someone say-so saying anything, but you're using analysis and reasoning as kind of proof. Why do you think, how's this winter going to be? Why? I mean, we're only about a month in, but why do you think this winter's not going to be good? that might be construed as an insult, and that was not my fault.
No, it's because it's like, I don't know, you just water like every
So by this winter not being good, you mean it's not going to be good because we're not going to have snow, and you're not going to be able to go sled riding.
Yeah.
Do you go sledding or do you go sled riding? Sledding. You're riding on the sled. Is this winter going to be good? I don't know. So there's not any logic or reasoning kind of getting you as proof. This one's not going to be good because you're saying it's getting warmer and we're not going to have all our nutrients not up fast. So you're coming up with reasoning, rationale, and whatnot. You could be going, well, the average temperature's been going up the last 3, so my guess is it's going to kind of continue to go up. That's not going to be any good because I won't be able to use my flexible instructional days, and I won't get that little time off on that random Wednesday come February. Yeah, it will be upset. The warrant is the part where people kind of get a little, not confused, but this is the one that I don't think makes quite as natural sense when as compared to the grounds and the claim. So the warrant, if you go back to the little picture that we had at the very beginning, the warrant serves as the linking function between, we had the data over here, we had the claim over here on this side of the board, the warrant was right in the middle. So it's connecting it. In a lot of arguments that get made, especially, simple everyday kind of stuff, the warrant tends to be implicit. It's unstated. I have a fever. Therefore, I should stay home. And then I can have more time. Yeah, I didn't go with that. That's okay. Does that make any sense to you? Okay, good. I don't know. Cowbell's from, like, how long ago did that been? Yeah, I was gonna say, that's probably like before your literal birth.
My dad's like,
Cowbell. I've heard that before, but you don't know it.
Oh wait, I thought it was like
Not the cheese thing.
no, I swear.
Did you ever remember from a movie? We'll have to say that for another time. Saturday Night Live. That lets you know how long ago it was that Will Ferrell was actually, in it. Will Ferrell was on Saturday Night Live. So this is that leap that's going to kind of connect those two. And a lot of times it'll end up being unstated. I have a fever. I shouldn't go to school today. Well, why not? I have a fever. Well, what's the connection between the fever and not going to school? So if I have a fever, there's a pretty good chance that I also have some kind of illness, virus going on. If I were to go to, I don't have that. If I were, that was Mrs. Burns, not really. If I were to go to school with the fever, I could potentially then get other people sick, and now I'd be ruining everyone's lives. And your midterm would get delayed, and you would be sick and heartbroken. So those are all things that are kind of going unstated, but we understand that that's that link that is connected between that evidence and the claim. That's assuming that people understand that that is pretty universal evidence that would make sense. But if you're dealing with a claim that you're not familiar with, that's where the warrant really becomes very important, and it might need to be stated a little bit more directly, or it very well might need to be explained. You do your TWA, rhetorical analysis, or DRQ, whatever, and you go, yep, here's this diction that's getting used to validate this argument, and you just leave it at that. I'm going to go, where's your explanation? I'm basically going, where's your warrant? How is that linking those things together? So if you're thinking of this from like an essay standpoint, because we had like claim being thesis, you think about the claim being your thesis statement. Your evidence is basically like your subtopics, what those body paragraphs would be. The warrant ends up being the explanation as to how does that evidence link up to a specific claim. Claims, too, can, just like how we have with different types of grounds and different types of claims, warrants, I should say, can also be coming from multiple things. The three main basic ones are going to be that ethos, logos, pathos, and then you also have the shared value idea. That's not to say that you're only going to be picking one over the other. What did Morgan tell you? That was like her sentence. Okay. Was this verbal or was this on her text? trust her. So the warrant you're going with then is pretty much going to be source credibility. Do you remember the screams from the broken leg? Or were you not there for the broken leg? You were not there. That's too bad. Okay. Have you ever broken your leg?
I know. I don't think that's the bus once. Yeah. Anyways,
Close to breaking your leg?
Broken nose, leg, thumb, arm.
Have you feel like your wisdom is out?
Yeah. I guess I probably had one of those sutures that kind of dissolved. Yeah, that's probably that's about the closest. Mine wasn't too bad. At the carpet place.
Yeah.
Okay. Not like random. Person got hit by a car and broke his leg. He deserved it.
It wasn't his like carpet shoes. Like,
Correct.
he took them.
Correct. Correct. She's not allowed to divulge that information right now. Please check with company representatives later. That's why Mr. Kern was kind of hobbling. But when it also comes like shared values, like ethos, pathos, logos, we're familiar with those. But hey, I should have the ability to express my views on whatever I want during AP government class. Well, no, that's not school appropriate. But I have right to free speech, Mr. Bob. That's kind of going with shared value. At which point he can go, well, right to free speech doesn't mean you can say whatever you want. It just means, and then you can have a little mini lesson on it. But you're in AP, so you won't. Which was better? Chicken is better than beef? And that's why chicken is better than beef. Yeah, libel, slander, things of. So when it comes to your categories of the warrants, it's not that you're going to necessarily go, okay, everything here is going to be logos, or I'm only going to do shared values. There does tend to be overlap amongst these. I would say more often than not, probably these two, though, with logos and shared values within our structure would be the ones that you'd be looking at the most. But again, from the Toulmin idea, it would be, okay, I'm going to observe things, and that's going to ultimately kind of lead to the claim that I should take. However, for us, more often than not, it kind of tends to turn into more of here's where I'll start. Now I'll kind of come up with some evidence. Different types of warrant. Muffin is running a temperature. I bet she has an infection. That fever, as we were just kind of talking about, is a reliable sign of infection as to why Meredith's guinea pig, Muffin, has a fever. I was just thinking about the rabbit. And I was like, I should have used the rabbit as an example.
Maybe it'll get an infection.
Ruby is squashed. Mr. Kane's footprint was on its back. What's the connection between the two? There's nothing to like about it. What do you mean by take care of? Take care of the bunny or take care of the bunny? I think more of the family is starting to realize my viewpoints. Yep. That dog's probably friendly. It is a golden retriever. Notice that dog is probably friendly is going to be your what? That's your claim. It's a golden retriever is your evidence. The warrant's a generalization. Most, probably not all, but most golden retrievers tend to be friendly. So you can kind of see how these things work out a little bit. So take a look at here. We're not going to go through all of this stuff. Let's do middle one. People over 65 are more dangerous drivers. Number of car accidents for people over 65 is twice that for people aged 18 to 25. Number of driving accidents is an indicator of driving ability. Of these three statements, which one? Well, identify one of them. I'll let you decide. Of those three, which one do you think would be a claim, would be data, or would be a warrant? First one is a claim, so people over 65 are more dangerous drivers. Do you agree? Yeah, man.
unless you hear him on the road, he's like, I get scared sometimes. Like,
We don't really know than what. I mean, are more than what the average driver. Brady with his driver's license. You have a driver's license. Number of car accidents for people over 65 is twice that for people aged 18 to 25. That's a fact. Well, yeah. If it's a fact / statistic, then it's going to be your grounds, your evidence, your data, and then here is the connection between the car accidents and being dangerous drivers. Number of driving accidents is an indicator of driving ability. Now, what we don't know, based from those, is how many drivers we have over 65 versus how many drivers do we have 18 to 25. You have twice as many drivers 65 and older than 18 to 25. Maybe that's not an indicator then of driving ability and safety and all those kinds of things. But we don't have that information here right there at our access. So yeah, we got claim, we got our evidence, we have our warrant. So that's kind of like how the main elements of it go together. What we'll start to look at tomorrow more so, I'm not worried about going through a whole bunch of examples. We'll just wait till tomorrow. Good place to end.
Mr. Decided